Hello everyone and welcome to Learn English with Sara. I'm so happy you're here today. In this video we'll learn English through a powerful and emotional story, a story about dreams, courage, and the determination to change one's life. As you listen, you'll not only improve your English vocabulary and listening skills, but also find inspiration to keep moving forward in your own journey. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. In a quiet fishing village on the coast of the Philippines, there lived a boy named Eli. His house was small, built from wood and palm leaves, standing just a few meters from the sea. Every morning he woke up to the sound of waves hitting the shore and the smell of salt in the air. His father was a fisherman who went out before dawn, and his mother sold fish and rice at the small market nearby. They didn't have much money, but they had love, laughter, and hope. Eli was 12 years old, thin-tanned by the sun, and full of curiosity. His favorite time of day was sunrise, when he could stand on the beach watching the fishing boats return while the sky turned golden pink. He dreamed that one day he too would go beyond the horizon, not to catch fish, but to study, to learn, and to see the world beyond his small village. School was not easy for him. His uniform was second-hand. His shoes had holes, and he carried his books in a plastic bag because he couldn't afford a backpack. Still, he never missed a day. The school was 3 kilometers away, and during the rainy season the path was muddy and slippery, but Eli kept walking, sometimes barefoot, with his heart full of dreams. He loved English class the most. While many of his classmates struggled to understand, Eli found joy in every new word he learned. He loved listening to the teacher read stories aloud. At night he would sit near a small oil lamp repeating English sentences again and again, trying to pronounce them perfectly. He had no internet, no tutor, and no fancy dictionary, only an old English book his teacher had given him. But to him that book was a treasure. His parents noticed how serious he was about studying. One evening his mother said softly, "Eli, why do you study so hard?" The boy smiled. "Because I want to be a teacher one day," he said. "I want to help other children learn, children like me who don't have much but still want to dream." Those words touched her deeply. From then on, she always kept the small lamp filled with oil so her son could read at night. His father, though quiet, began bringing him scraps of paper he found while delivering fish. "For your notes," he said with a small grin. But life in the village was harsh. Some days the sea was rough and his father came home empty-handed. The family had little to eat. Sometimes Eli went to school with only a piece of bread in his pocket, yet he never complained. When classmates teased him for wearing old clothes or speaking English aloud to himself, he simply smiled and kept going. His teacher once told him something he would never forget. "Eli, knowledge is a boat. It can take you anywhere, but only if you keep rowing." That night, those words echoed in his heart. From that moment on, Eli studied harder than ever. He began helping his little sister with her lessons, teaching her English words he had just learned. Each time she understood something new, he felt proud, as if his dream of being a teacher was already starting to come true. Then one day his school announced a regional English scholarship exam. The winner would earn a place at a larger school in the nearby city with real teachers, a library, and computers. Eli's heart jumped with excitement. This was his chance. For weeks he prepared. He practiced reading aloud, memorized new words, and wrote short essays on every scrap of paper he could find. His teacher believed in him, and his parents prayed for him. On the morning of the exam, he woke up before sunrise. The sea was calm, and he felt it was a good sign. He put on his cleanest shirt, hugged his mother, and walked to school with hope shining in his eyes. In the exam room, he sat quietly, hands trembling slightly. When the test began, he focused on every question, his pencil moving quickly across the paper. He did his best, remembering everything he had learned. When it was over, he felt proud. He truly believed that he had done well. But a week later, when the results were posted, his world changed. His name wasn't on the list. He had failed. Eli stood staring at the paper for a long time. He read it again and again, hoping it was a mistake. But the truth was there, clear and painful. His dream of going to the city was gone. That night he didn't study. He sat by the window watching the dark waves roll toward the shore. He felt small, useless, and broken. Maybe I'm just not good enough, he thought. Maybe dreams like mine aren't meant for people like us. But just as those thoughts filled his heart, he heard his little sister whisper, "Eli, can you still help me with my homework?" He turned to her, saw her hopeful eyes, and smiled weakly. "Of course," he said. And in that moment, something inside him changed. He realized that failure didn't have to be the end. It could be the beginning of something stronger, something greater. That night, he opened his book again, lit the lamp, and whispered to himself, "I'll try again. I will not give up." From that night onward, Eli was different. The failure still hurt, but it no longer controlled him. Instead, it became a fire burning quietly inside him, a reminder that dreams are worth fighting for even when the world says no. He promised himself that he would work harder than ever before. Every morning before sunrise, Eli helped his father fix the fishing nets or carry baskets of fish to the market. His hands smelled of salt and seaweed, and his clothes were often wet from the waves, but he didn't complain. When the work was done, he ran home, washed quickly, grabbed his books, and began his 3-kilometer walk to school. While most students talked or played on the way, Eli repeated English words softly to himself, practicing pronunciation. He spoke as if the sea breeze could hear him. Sometimes other children laughed. "Look at him," they said. Talking to the wind again, Eli smiled and kept walking. He knew they didn't understand what he was building word by word, step by step. At school, he sat in the front row, focused on every lesson. His notebooks were full of neat handwriting and small drawings that helped him remember new words. During breaks, instead of joining games, he visited the library. It was small, with only a few English books. But to Eli, it felt like a treasure chest. He read every page carefully, even when he didn't understand everything. When he found difficult words, he wrote them down, looked them up later, and repeated them until they became familiar friends. His teacher noticed his effort. One afternoon, as the other students left the classroom, she called him over. "Eli," she said gently, "I know you were disappointed about the exam. But I've been watching you. You haven't stopped learning. That's something very special." Eli lowered his eyes shyly. "I just don't want to give up, ma'am." She smiled. "Good. Because real success isn't about winning every time. It's about getting back up when you fall." Those words stayed in his heart. That night, he wrote them on the first page of his notebook and underlined them twice. As weeks passed, the other students began to notice how serious Eli was. When they had questions, they started asking him for help. The same boys who once laughed now whispered, "Eli, how do you say this in English?" or "Can you help me with my homework?" And Eli always said yes. He never acted proud or better than anyone else. He just smiled and shared what he knew. But not everyone was kind. Some adults in the village still doubted him. One fisherman told his father, "Your boy spends too much time with books. Books don't fill empty stomachs." Eli's father didn't argue. He simply said, "Maybe not today, but one day they will." In the evenings, Eli studied by the soft glow of the oil lamp. Some nights the wind blew so hard that the flame flickered dangerously. He had to cup his hand around it to keep it from going out. He read, wrote, and practiced speaking until his eyes were heavy. When he finally lay down to sleep, he whispered to himself in English, "Tomorrow, I will learn something new." Months later, something unexpected happened. A new English teacher arrived at the school. Her name was Miss Clara. She had studied abroad and spoke with confidence and warmth. On her first day, she asked each student to introduce themselves in English. Most were shy, but Eli stood up and spoke clearly, his voice shaking a little but full of effort. "My name is Eli," he said. "I come from this village. I love English because it helps me see the world with bigger eyes." The class went silent for a moment. Then Miss Clara smiled. "That was beautiful," she said. "You have great potential." After class, she called him aside. "Eli, do you study English at home?" He nodded. "Every night. I don't have many books, but I try." She looked impressed. "If you're willing to work hard, I can help you. Would you like that?" Eli's eyes widened in surprise. "Really, ma'am?" "Really," she said with a smile. "Meet me after class tomorrow." And so began a new chapter in Eli's life. Every afternoon he stayed after school with Miss Clara. She taught him pronunciation, writing, and conversation. She corrected his mistakes kindly and encouraged him to keep speaking. She even lent him English storybooks, the kind he had only dreamed of reading before. But more than language, Miss Clara taught him something even more valuable. "Eli," she said one evening as they watched the sunset from the school window, "your circumstances don't define you. Your choices do. You already have what many people never find: discipline and heart. Keep using them." Eli listened carefully. Her words filled him with strength. He realized that learning English was not just about passing exams. It was about opening doors not only for himself but for others too. From then on, he studied with a new kind of energy. He no longer chased results, he chased improvement. And little by little, he began to see changes not only in his grades but in his confidence. One afternoon, Miss Clara handed him a flyer. "There's an English camp happening in the city next month," she said. "Students from different schools will attend. I think you should go." Eli hesitated. "But I've never been to the city," he said softly, "and I don't think we can afford the trip." Miss Clara placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Sometimes the best opportunities come when you're brave enough to take the first step. Let me talk to the principal. We'll find a way." That night, Eli told his parents about the camp. His mother's face lit up, though her eyes looked worried. "It costs money," she said. His father thought for a moment, then nodded firmly. "We'll make it work," he said. "If this is your dream, we'll find a way." The next morning, his mother sold a few baskets of fish, and his father mended extra nets for the neighbors to earn a little more. By the end of the week, they had just enough for the bus fare. When they handed him the money, his mother whispered, "Go learn everything you can. Then come home and teach us." Eli hugged them tightly. "I will," he said. He didn't know it yet, but this trip would change his life forever. The morning of the camp arrived with a bright sunrise and a soft sea breeze. Eli stood by the bus stop with his small backpack, the same one his father had repaired with fishing thread the night before. His heart pounded with excitement and fear. The road ahead led to the city, a place he had only seen in pictures or heard about from travelers. The journey took 3 hours. When the bus finally arrived in the city, Eli's eyes widened. The tall buildings, the traffic, the noise, everything felt new and alive. He clutched his bag tightly as he followed the signs toward the school where the camp was held. There were more than 50 students from different towns and villages. Some wore clean uniforms and spoke English easily, while others were quiet and nervous like him. For a moment, Eli felt small again, just a boy from a fishing village. But then he remembered Miss Clara's words, "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be brave." He took a deep breath and smiled. The first activity was an introduction game. Each student had to stand up, say their name, and share one dream. When it was his turn, Eli's hands trembled, but his voice stayed steady. "My name is Eli," he said clearly. "I come from a small fishing village by the sea. My dream is to become a teacher, not just to teach English, but to teach hope." The room went silent for a moment, then several students began to clap. The organizer smiled warmly. "That's beautiful, Eli. Thank you for sharing." By the end of the first day, Eli had made new friends, students who shared his love for learning. They played word games, practiced English conversations, and even sang songs together. For the first time, Eli realized he wasn't alone in his dream. There were other young people who wanted to grow, to study, to make a difference. At night, as he lay on his bunk bed, Eli couldn't stop thinking about everything he had seen and heard. The teachers spoke about opportunities, scholarships, and online learning platforms. The students talked about books, podcasts, and movies in English. Eli listened with wide eyes. He wanted to learn it all. The next morning, a volunteer teacher from Manila gave a talk. "English," she said, "is not just a language. It's a bridge to new people, new ideas, and new places. But the most important bridge you'll ever build is the one between your dream and your effort." Those words hit Eli deeply. He wrote them in his notebook that night. When the camp ended 2 days later, he didn't feel sad. He felt stronger, filled with determination. He thanked his teachers and said goodbye to his new friends, promising to stay in touch. When he returned home, the village looked the same: quiet waves, wooden houses, the familiar smell of the sea. But Eli was not the same. He was glowing with energy. Miss Clara met him at school the next day, so she asked with a smile, "How was it?" "It was amazing," Eli said. "I learned new words, made friends, and I even spoke English in front of everyone." "I knew you would," she said proudly. "Now what will you do next?" Eli thought for a moment. "I want to teach the younger kids in the village, just small lessons so they can love English too." Miss Clara's eyes softened. "That's a wonderful idea. You're becoming a teacher already." And so he did. Every weekend, Eli gathered a few children from the neighborhood and taught them under a big mango tree near his home. He drew letters in the sand, told simple stories, and helped them pronounce English words. The children laughed, learned, and began to look forward to his small tree classroom. Soon even adults stopped to watch. One elderly fisherman said, "That boy, he's teaching for free. Maybe learning really can change lives." Eli's little sister Lyra was his most dedicated student. She carried her notebook proudly and practiced words with him every night. Watching her learn made Eli feel proud, as if all the hard work, all the failures, all the nights spent studying by a dim lamp were finally worth it. Months passed. Then one afternoon, Miss Clara announced something exciting. "Our school has been invited to the regional English speech competition," she said. "We can send one student to represent us. Eli's heart skipped a beat. He had always admired people who spoke confidently in English, sharing their stories in front of others. Miss Clara smiled. "I think you should try Eli." He froze. "Me, but I'm not ready. There are so many better students." Miss Clara shook her head gently. "You're more ready than you think. You have a story that can inspire others. Don't speak perfectly, speak truthfully." That night, Eli couldn't sleep. He walked outside and looked at the sea. The moonlight danced on the waves, and he remembered how far he had come. From the boy who failed an exam to someone who could now teach others. Maybe Miss Clara was right. Maybe this was his next challenge. He decided to do it. The next day he told his teacher yes. They chose a topic together, the power of dreams. It was simple, but it was his story. For weeks he practiced every evening. He stood in front of a small mirror, speaking slowly, fixing his pronunciation. His sister pretended to be the audience, clapping after every speech. His parents smiled quietly, watching from the doorway. Finally, the day of the competition arrived. Eli wore his cleanest shirt and his repaired shoes. His father walked him to the bus stop and said, "Remember, it doesn't matter if you win or lose. Just speak from the heart." When Eli arrived at the event, he saw students from big schools, confident, fluent, and well-dressed. For a moment, fear crept in again. But then he touched the small seashell necklace his mother had given him and took a deep breath. When his name was called, he walked to the stage. The microphone looked huge and the lights were bright. His hands trembled. But as he began to speak, the nervousness melted away. "My name is Eli," he said softly. "I come from a small village by the sea. There the waves taught me something important, that no matter how many times you fall, you can rise again." He spoke from his heart, sharing his struggles, his failures, and his dreams. His English wasn't perfect, but his words were honest. The audience listened in silence. When he finished, there was a long pause and then applause. Later that day, when the winners were announced, Eli didn't win first place, but he received a special recognition, the Most Inspiring Speech Award. Miss Clara met him after the ceremony, her eyes full of pride. "You see," she said, "you didn't need to be the best. You just needed to be brave." Eli smiled, holding the certificate in his hands. For the first time, he truly believed that he could achieve anything, not because life was easy, but because he had learned to stand after every fall. The weeks after the speech competition felt like a dream. Everyone in the village heard about Eli's award, and even people who once doubted him now smiled and greeted him with respect. The shopkeeper who had laughed at him before said kindly, "You make us proud, boy." Eli would simply bow his head and reply, "Thank you." Deep inside, he knew it wasn't about fame, it was about hope. Back at school, Miss Clara encouraged him to keep going. "The regional exam is coming soon," she reminded him. "If you pass, you'll qualify for a scholarship in the city. I think you're ready." Eli froze. The scholarship exam, the same kind he had once failed. His heart filled with both excitement and fear. He remembered the pain of seeing his name missing from the list. But this time, something inside him whispered, "You're not the same boy anymore." So he began to prepare again. Every day after school, he stayed behind to study. Miss Clara helped him revise grammar, reading comprehension, and essay writing. His friends joined him, and soon the classroom became a small study group filled with quiet determination. At home, his family supported him in every way they could. His mother cooked his favorite rice porridge every morning, and his father stopped bringing him to the market so he could study more. This time his father said, "Go give it everything." The night before the exam, Eli sat by the window, his oil lamp flickering softly beside him. He looked out at the ocean, the same ocean that had witnessed his failures, his lessons, and his dreams. The wind was calm, and the stars shimmered above. "I'm ready," he whispered. "Whatever happens, I'll give my best." The next morning he left home before sunrise. His father walked with him halfway to the bus stop, their footsteps crunching softly on the sand. "Do your best, son," his father said. "Remember, we're proud of you no matter the result." When Eli arrived at the exam center, hundreds of students were already there. Some wore glasses, others carried brand new backpacks and pens. For a moment, Eli felt small again. But then he took a deep breath and reminded himself, it's not about what you have. It's about what you do with what you have. He found his seat, opened his notebook, and said a silent prayer. When the invigilator announced, "You may begin," Eli's hands stopped shaking. He turned to the first page, English, his favorite subject. He smiled slightly and started writing. The questions were challenging, but he remembered everything Miss Clara had taught him. He took his time, staying calm, focusing one step at a time. Hours passed. His hand ached from writing, and sweat ran down his back, but he didn't stop. He gave everything he had. When he finished the last essay about the importance of education, he smiled. The words had come from his heart. He wrote about how education was not only about knowledge, but about courage, kindness, and believing in yourself. When the final bell rang, he put down his pen, closed his eyes, and felt a deep peace. For once, he didn't worry about the result. He knew he had done his best. That evening, when he came home, his mother was waiting at the door. She didn't ask about the test. She just smiled and handed him a warm bowl of soup. "Whatever happens," she said softly, "we're proud." Eli nodded, feeling the tears gather in his eyes. "Thank you, Mama." Days passed slowly after that. The village returned to its usual rhythm, fishermen calling out at dawn, children laughing near the beach waves rolling against the sand. But inside Eli's heart, every sunrise felt like a countdown. Then one morning, Miss Clara called out to him as he walked into class. Her smile was brighter than the sunlight. "Eli," she said, "come with me." She led him to the bulletin board outside the office. His name was there, written clearly at the top. He had not only passed, but earned one of the highest scores in the region. He stood frozen, staring at it, his heart thundering in disbelief. "You did it," Miss Clara said proudly. "You qualified for the city scholarship." Eli covered his mouth, tears filling his eyes. He couldn't speak. When he finally found his voice, all he could whisper was, "Thank you." The news spread quickly. His classmates clapped, the headmaster congratulated him, and Miss Clara gave him a gentle pat on the shoulder. "See, Eli," she said. "When you fall and rise again, you don't just win, you transform." That evening, when he reached home, his mother cried tears of joy. His father, a man of few words, simply nodded and said, "You've made us proud, son. You've opened a new door for our family." His little sister jumped around the house shouting, "My brother is going to the city." A few days later, Eli received the official letter. The scholarship covered everything: tuition, books, meals, even a small dorm room in the city. It was more than he had ever dreamed. Before he left, the whole village gathered to see him off. The fishermen, shopkeepers, neighbors, and even the children from his weekend class came to wave goodbye. The old fisherman, who once doubted him, placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Go and make us proud, boy." Show the world that the sea can raise dreamers too." Eli smiled and nodded. "I'll come back," he promised, "and I'll teach everything I learn." As the bus drove away, he looked out at the shimmering ocean one last time. The horizon stretched endlessly before him, a symbol of everything still waiting to be discovered. For the first time, Eli didn't just dream of change, he was living it. The city was nothing like Eli's small coastal village. The moment he stepped off the bus, he was surrounded by the sounds of honking cars, the smell of street food, and a rush of people moving in every direction. Tall buildings stood like giants above him, and neon signs flickered in colors he had never seen before. It felt like stepping into another world, exciting but also overwhelming. His scholarship school was huge compared to his old one. There were hundreds of students' big classrooms with projectors, a library that looked endless, and teachers from all over the country. On his first day, Eli stood quietly at the gate, clutching his bag tightly. For a moment, he felt like that same small boy who had once failed an exam, lost and unsure. But then he remembered Miss Clara's voice echoing in his mind. "Be brave. You've earned this place." He took a deep breath and walked through the gates. Life in the city was hard at first. Eli struggled to adjust to the fast pace. Many of his classmates spoke English fluently, used laptops, and had access to things he had never seen. Sometimes when he couldn't understand a lesson quickly enough, he felt that old fear of not belonging return. But each time it did, he reminded himself why he was there, not to compare but to learn. He spent long hours in the library reading everything he could find. When others relaxed after class, he reviewed his notes. Slowly he began to catch up. His teachers noticed his effort and encouraged him. "You're one of the most determined students I've met," one said. "Keep going, Eli." The best part was when he joined the student volunteer club. They visited small villages outside the city to teach children basic English and reading skills. When Eli stood in front of those children, he saw his younger self in their bright, curious eyes. He spoke slowly, using simple words, and shared stories about his own journey. "You can do this too," he told them. Dreams grow stronger when you feed them with effort. The children listened with wide eyes, just like he once had. At the end of each visit, they would run up to hug him, shouting, "Teacher Eli." That name touched him deeply. It was what he had always wanted to become. Years passed. Eli finished his studies with excellent marks and was offered a teaching job at the same school he had attended as a scholarship student. He could have stayed in the city living comfortably, but when he thought about the sea, his family and the children waiting in his village, he knew what he had to do. So one bright morning he packed his books and took the long bus ride home. The road curved between green fields and rivers, and as the bus neared the coastline, the smell of salt filled the air again. When he stepped down, the villagers rushed to greet him. His mother hugged him tightly, his father smiled with pride, and his little sister, now a young woman, said, "Welcome home, Teacher Eli." Eli laughed and wiped away tears. "It feels good to be back," he said softly. He didn't waste time. Within a week, he reopened his old mango tree classroom. This time there were more students, not just children, but even adults who wanted to learn. He brought new books, chalk, and posters from the city. The laughter and energy under that tree made the whole village come alive. Miss Clara, who had since moved to another town, visited one afternoon. When she saw him teaching, her eyes filled with tears. "You did it, Eli," she said. "You became the teacher you always dreamed of." Eli smiled. "You were the first person who believed in me," he said. I just wanted to do the same for others. Over the years, his small village changed. More children stayed in school. Some went on to win scholarships of their own. The community grew stronger, more hopeful. And every time a student succeeded, Eli felt as proud as if it were his own victory. One quiet evening after a long day of teaching, Eli sat by the sea. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The waves rolled gently, whispering memories of the boy who had once stood there dreaming of a better life. He smiled and thought, success isn't about escaping where you come from. It's about returning and making it better. A few weeks later, a journalist from a city newspaper came to interview him. She asked Eli, "You've achieved so much. You've turned your village into a place of learning and hope. How do you define success?" Eli thought for a long moment before answering. "When I was young, I thought success meant wealth or fame, but now I know better. Success is not about how high you climb. It's about how many people you lift along the way. It's about believing when no one else does, working when it's hard, and giving when you finally can." The journalist smiled. "That's beautiful," she said. "And what advice would you give to young dreamers?" Eli looked at the children playing by the shore and said, "Don't let failure stop you. Don't let fear silence you. Every small step, every hard day, every word you learn brings you closer to your dream. Keep going, and one day you'll realize you are becoming strong all along." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Eli picked up a seashell from the sand, the same kind his mother once gave him before the speech competition. He turned it in his hand and whispered, "Thank you to his parents, to Miss Clara, to the sea, and to the journey itself." He smiled at the sound of children laughing in the distance. Tomorrow there would be another lesson to teach another dream, to encourage another heart to inspire. And that, he knew, was true success. Thank you so much for listening to this story on Learn English with Sara. I hope Eli's journey inspires you to keep learning, to stay brave, and to never give up on your dreams. Remember, every word you learn brings you one step closer to your goal. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories and English lessons. Keep believing in yourself and keep learning every day.